Here's my first video on Satie's Gymnopedie. This is one of the most famous piano pieces ever written. It's also one of the most relaxing piano pieces ever written. As well as a pianist, as you get to certain parts of it, it can be very difficult and some of the sounds can be a little bit difficult. And then you wonder, how is this so relaxing? It's all about how he puts it together. So we're gonna start right at the beginning and I'm gonna go through the first half of the piece. The second half of the piece is almost identical. I'm going to do that in video 2, and in video 3 we're going to take a look at how to make it musical. One of the first things you should always look at when you're looking at a new piece of music is, what's the key? In this case, we have two sharps. Two sharps indicates either D major or B minor. This can be a little confusing. Now, of course, I've written the first two chord names above the treble clef. So you see G major 7 and D major 7. So you get a good idea that we're probably in D major here. So what could really be confusing, though, is a G major 7 looks like this. Now, if I take the G off, what chord do you get? You get a B minor chord. And then when you put it like this, well, this G is all the way down here. Does it really matter? It actually does. The chords are going to be based off of everything that's in the measure there. So this is still a G major 7, but it can feel like B minor at first. So the second chord that you play, if you look at that just in the right hand, it almost looks like the 5 chord in B minor. So it really gets confusing, but it's actually a D major 7. So this is such an interesting piece for that. So one thing great to practice just to start is getting these chords. This is an ostinato. I've written that into here. Right there, ostinato in the bass. An ostinato is a short repeated kind of phrase or pattern, and it's usually a very short thing. It's not going to be anything extensive. So in this case, it's just basically 2 notes down here in the bass and 2 chords that are part of the ostinato. So here's your ostinato. And that repeats over and over again. Now, after you get past the first 4 measures, your left hand is going to be doing a lot of this. So here's my practice technique for all of you. With your left hand, first thing you want to be able to be good at and practice as much as you can just to get comfortable with where you're going is that pattern just in the left hand. Now, of course, for the first 4 measures, you can use your right hand for the chords, but after that, you can't. So one trick that I have for you is whenever you are jumping back and forth, don't feel like you can't look at your keyboard. Just don't look at your hands. Look at the notes you're going to. So what's the first note? G. I just moved my eyes down to this G. There's my first one. Now I'm going to pick a note in the chord to look at, and then I look down at this D, and then up at the chord. And then I get kind of used to where it is. Now let's move on to the melody. I'm going to move these things over here. Usually cut this stuff out. But you get to see some of the inside things that I do here. Melody starts here on this F sharp. You have 2 notes. 3 and 5 playing those 2 notes. Let's scoot down. Now, when we get back to this F sharp, the next note has to be this C sharp. Now, you want to try to play legato. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a finger substitution. My 3rd finger is on the F sharp. I move to 4, then 2. And then here, 1, 4, 5, 3. It'll just make life easier, I promise. And even here, when you hit this F sharp, this gets a little confusing. So we'll get to there in just a minute. So let's all just try that section with me. I'm going to lower this. You're not going to see the left hand, but you're going to be able to see all of the right hand starting from here all the way to here. And that's as far as we're going to go. Try playing it with me. 2, 3, go. 2, All right, now I am going kind of slow here, right? This is the speed of the piece. One of the other things to look at before we move on further is the tempo. In this, it's in French, lent et douloureux, means slow and painful. So just means play slow. He's being over dramatic, I think. All right, so that left hand is continuing to play that same ostinato, so you don't even really need to see the left hand to add it to this. So let's try this starting right here. 1, ready, go. And stop there. Something new happens. So let's take a look at this section. There's many ways that you can play this. One of the difficulties is this held F sharp. You're not going to be able to hold the F sharp. I'm just going to be blunt. You won't be able to do it. You can do it with a Substitution pedal if you have one. The way that would work is as you hit these first notes, the F sharp and the G, is you would push down your middle pedal right after. You push down the middle pedal, release. Now these two are being held. Nothing else is. Just those two notes. And then you're able to actually see, you can still hear it. Now the only problem is this note's also being held just a little bit too. So you have to kind of choose what you want to do. The next option is to hold down the pedal. Now do know that there are another 2 measures of this. This is repeated again on the next line, and you'll see that as I go through the music here. So we could just do this. So I'm just holding the pedal down through. Now depending on your piano, that might be too much. So then you can do some kind of half pedaling or just full pedaling with it. I'll demonstrate a half pedal, which means you kind of flutter around the middle and try to find just the right spot to get enough resonance in here. I let it go a little too much on that last one. All right, this is one of the only spots that actually gets forte, and it is a sudden forte, even though it doesn't say subito, but it is sudden, and it is only on the chords. It is not on the bottom bass line here. Then we immediately go back to a pianissimo, which does crescendo, and this is doing the same thing we did at the beginning. You've heard this before. Now, let's move on to this next line. This is where it changes just a little bit. Now we finally change chords. The ostinato finally ends here. So let's look at just the left hand. Left hand, F sharp. Same chord on top here that we just played the measure before, down to a B. Still playing this top part of that G major 7, so it's basically a B minor chord now. It's switching over here, and then to E, another E on the bottom, with a G chord on top here, and it does keep changing here. We're going down to a D, with the D minor chord, and then an A, with an A minor chord, and then another D, with that E minor on top. Ooh, so that's actually an E minor 7 chord, even though I didn't write that way. I kind of messed up and didn't write it in the top. And then the next chord. So now we finally have a 4-note chord. Don't worry, your left hand doesn't have to play all those notes. Anytime you have a 4-note chord, your right hand is going to play the top note at any point. There are plenty of versions out there that have that show that top note in the right hand part. So if you're taking the class with me on this, my group class on this, I do share a version that shows that in the right hand, so it makes it a little bit easier to read. But like I said, there's a lot of different versions out there that show this in different ways. So when we get here, you're playing the D and then just the bottom 3 notes. So it's just a G major chord, fairly simple. And then the D again with the A minor chord on top of it. And then the D here. So it's a D7 suspended 2. It's a lot of words. And then just to get to the end, then we'll go back to that melody. We've got one more chord before I go back. In this D minor 7, it just does it again. So let's go back and look at this one small section at a time. This part we already did. This is the part that's the same as the beginning. And then the last 2 lines of this page, I'm actually going to zoom in out just a little bit so you can actually see the whole thing as we go through it. And now as we get down here, this repeated D is called a pedal point. Any repeated note throughout that is possibly part of or not part of the chords, but still a continued, either repeated note or a continued sounding note is a pedal point. So I'm going to be starting from where the chord changes are. I'm actually going to start one measure before here. So we have an A here. I'm going to go very slowly. So I still have that same chord we did before, then up to a C sharp, then down to up to an F sharp with the next chord, and then down to this E. Now you do not have to be able to reach this. I can. If you can, great. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just move your hand. But I'll show you me doing it this way. Now, here's, so there's a couple ways you can do this. And now I'm showing you it with the left hand playing these, playing all the chords, just because I thought about this week and thought, why not? I'm trying to do this a little bit differently. Now, a more traditional way would be to have the left hand not play those notes, even though that's the way I showed it to you. You can do it this way. Now that is actually a little bit harder because you do have to do a lot of finger substitution on that E. But give it a try both ways, see which is more comfortable for you. Neither is going to be more musical than the other if you do it right. I'm going to continue on to the A minor chord here. Now we're changing some notes. All right, now here's where the right hand is going to play that top E. Yes, there, and then right, and then the next measure that I went to as well is really just the same thing. You're going to hold that top E, and we're going to play that same chord again, almost the same chord again. Only difference is that middle note, so we change this chord, the chord structure to just a D minor 7 here. All right, let's continue on. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more again so you can see the rest of this line. There's a couple more of these chords coming up. So remember, right hand is going to play the top notes on this one. And let's take a look at that. The melody is fairly simple. It's getting it all together and being musical. So we're doing a D minor 7 again. We have the D at the bottom here. Then another D at the bottom. With this D9 chord here. And I'm not going to go into the theory behind this, but this is a D9 chord. These are all fairly simple once you kind of get used to where everything is here. There's not that many chords being used, so let's try this hands together. There's that E in the right hand. Now, same thing here. I'm going to play the D in the right hand. And you know what's going to happen on that next line is same thing that happened before. Then it's going to play same chord we did on that top line. Now I'm going to keep going. It's a little easier to follow now as you've done a little bit of this. I'm going to go very slow. Now we're changing chords. F sharp minor. It gets interesting now, right? Then a B minor chord. So here I use my thumb on the B and do a crossover, and then back to the thumb. It's an A major chord. Let's keep going. And you can get a copy of this music from lots of different places online. It does the same 3 notes again, but the left hand, remember, is going to play the top note if you need to. And so that top note is an A. All right, we're almost to the end of this middle section. You're almost there. Now here, an F sharp in the right hand with the E on the bottom. And then A minor 7. This is the 5 chord in D minor and D major. At least according to Satie it is, I guess. So normally you would have an A major chord going to that D major chord, but Satie decided to change it up a little bit and put an A minor chord in instead of this. Doesn't that sound more like what you would hear in classical music? Happy A7 chord, but it's an A minor 7 chord. Sorry. Instead of the A7 chord. And then what happens after that? It's a near repeat of that first half. So what I'm going to do in part 2 is go over that half, or at least the changes in that half. Part 2 is coming soon as I can possibly make the video for you. So I hope this is helpful. And if you have any questions, please let me know. If you are in my Take Lessons class on this piece, you can talk to me about it in the class. If you missed it, don't worry. You can join Take Lessons Live. I teach through there, and you can join any of my classes there.